one. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another new rendition. We used to call this game plan. Now we're calling it Athletes with Swag. We're going to currently go around Mount Sinai's institution of Icahn School of Medicine and reach out to former athletes that are now on their way to being the next doctor, researcher, or just working in the field of medicine all around. Today we got Chris, and Chris is happy to speak to you. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm gonna throw it to Chris. He's gonna tell you his story, tell you his journey about sports, about college, about medical school, and everything. And then at the end, we'll have some Q&A. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you for the little intro, Anthony. So to tell you guys a bit about myself, um, you know, I'm Chris. I'm currently a fourth year med student, although I guess I just graduated, so I'm an incoming resident. I'm going to be doing an anesthesiology residency, staying here at Mount Sinai Hospital, which I'm very excited about. And going back to how sports came into my life. It's always been a big part of my life. I grew up close to my grandparents, and they were both involved with athletics. My grandma, she was a pro handball player, and my granddad was a PE teacher. So when I was younger, hanging out with them, we would always just, shoot around, swim, literally anything and everything. Played Little League growing up, like played a bunch of different sports all the way through middle school and high school. But throughout this period, I would say that my main focus was really just kind of having a good time. School was fun. I was super interested in the sciences, super interested in history. But sports with my buddies was just made it all the more fun. So I played tennis, I played basketball. Um, and to give you a bit of context, I actually moved around a bit growing up, right? So I was born in Toronto, and then I lived in Connecticut, and then I went to high school in Hong Kong. So sort of having the continuity there with sports was pretty difficult. That meant that I had to switch sports a lot of the time. And so when it came time for college, it was really through an academic route that I went to college. I wasn't a sick recruited athlete or anything. Um, but I went to Dartmouth up in New Hampshire. Loved it, loved all 4 years there. And a big part of that was definitely because I joined the varsity sailing team there. So I was a walk-on there. We had tryouts, everything. I actually didn't come in with a wealth of sailing experience, which, was pretty fortunate for me that they were looking for people because the team happens to be one of the best in the country. I was sailing with kids who were coming from the UK, from Spain, and all over the country, who had represented their countries at the highest level. Whether it's in the Youth Olympics or international competitions or whatever else. So felt very out of my depth there. But it was such a welcoming environment. I think sports, you know, uh, people who are involved in sports always know, they recognize and respect effort. And when I walked onto the team, the reason why I did that was because I really just wanted to be part of a community where, being with like-minded teammates, all working towards one goal, winning a championship, was something that, I mostly had just, done pretty, in a pretty limited way, like nothing like, collegiate athletics, Division I athletics, anything like that. So, um, it was an opportunity of a lifetime, basically. So, um, I'll start to be more chronological now. Starting in freshman year, I walked on, and at that time when I arrived at school, sports was like a huge thing on my mind. I wanted to get involved with the team, but I had always known that I wanted to be a doctor. This was something that, my mom was a doctor growing up, and my dad, was a biomedical engineer. So the conversations at the dinner table were always healthcare related. And so it wasn't really a question of if, it was a question of how, because I wasn't sure if I could cut it. So So the first thing that I set my mind to was sort of like, okay, I'm gonna do pre-med in college probably. But I also don't know if I'm gonna get in, so I should probably get some, hands-on skills just in case I don't cut it. So I picked a computer science major for myself in college, and um, that was tricky to balance for sure with between the computer science courses, between the pre-med courses and sailing and also finding time for, a social life and sleep. It was sort of trial by fire the moment I got on campus because uh, you know, it's a new environment with a bunch of new people and life comes at you fast with all these things that you get involved in. College is such an amazing experience with so many opportunities. And so I kind of started drinking from the fire hose the moment I stepped onto campus in Hanover, New Hampshire. Um, so I think throughout this period, trying to balance all of these competing priorities was a huge there was a huge learning curve for that. To give you an idea of what I was dealing with, um, you know, there's a limit, an NCAA limit to like 20 hours of practice a week, obviously not inclusive of competition on the weekends. Um, I think that did include our time in the lift room. So we would pretty much max out the 20 hours of practice. And then on the weekends, I would be traveling for competitions for our regattas. Usually we stayed in the New England area, so like Boston, Connecticut. Some, I think sometimes folks would go further, but it was mostly limited to that area. So the drives, they wouldn't go longer than like 5 hours. But it would pretty much take up your entire weekend, right? So I would kind of estimate the actual time in competition at like 40 hours a week, or time associated with the team at 40 hours a week. So that's kind of like a 9 to 5 by itself weekly. And then in terms of school, at Dartmouth, we unlike other schools, we operate on a quarter system. So we have 10 weeks for each of our courses. We take 3 or 4 a term or a quarter, and then it's just off to the races. So um, there was a lot of there wasn't a single wasted second in a day, basically. And on top of that, given that, I was thinking about pre-med, I was thinking about like, okay, what kind of extracurriculars do I want to do to explore my interest and to also sort of, uh, stand out to medical schools when I was applying. So I got involved with research pretty early on. I reached out to a professor pretty much as soon as I got to campus who was doing something I was interested in. Um, he was doing neuroimaging research, and what blew me away was that this is a PhD at the top of his field, and I just shot him a cold email, and he took the time out of his day, and he kept taking the time out of his day to mentor me and guide me. And so I guess a big key takeaway from that part of college was, sort of learning that I could just reach out to people that I didn't know in college and they would just be willing to help me out of the kindness of their heart. Previously, it was always asking like a teacher in school or like a coach or, like a teammate. And this really opened my mind to the possibilities of putting yourself out there, and just be willing to take a risk. Um, so I got involved with that neuroimaging research. Pretty much did that my whole 4 years. Managed to get a first author publication out of that. That was really exciting. Um, but throughout this period of time, I was always thinking, like, what else uh, can I do to really make sure that medicine is right for me? Because, like I mentioned, there's a wealth of opportunity out there in college. And so you get distracted, right? It's not just the things that, are right in front of you. You see the things that other people are doing, and you sort of, think, what if that could be me? So for me, the track that went down was, there are a lot of funding opportunities on campus for um, all sorts of ideas, whatever somebody brought to the table. And so merging my interest between computer science and medicine sort of started to take shape at this point of college, like pretty early on, because there's just so much opportunity. Um, so what I did at that point was I drew inspiration from the people that matter most to me. I talked to you guys earlier about my grandparents who inspired me to do sports in the first place. And, at this point, when I entered college, they were like maybe in their early to mid 80s. And so a big issue for them was taking their medication. A lot of folks are on medication, and so I was thinking, I always saw my granddad forgetting to take his pills. My grandma would get on his case about it. And so I was thinking, what if I could build a sort of technological solution for that? So something else I did during this time was I got funding, a nice 20K from the Stamps Foundation. Thank you very much. To build a voice powered medication adherence assistant. Um, to basically help folks remember to take their pills. Because, I don't know about your grandparents, but my grandparents are not too good with their phones. So I figured a voice interface would be better for them. And so um, it was really cool getting involved in that. And, honestly, looking back on this time period, I'm really not sure how I managed to squeeze all of that into like 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. Um, I think what it mostly came down to was like the kindness of a lot of people to understand the different things that I was balancing in my schedule. I think, I know a lot of athletes, a lot of my teammates were like this, like you kind of just take it on yourself to step up and to perform when it's required of you. But it can be really helpful when folks are checking in with you, like your coach, like, hey, how's it going? How's school? To speak up for yourself and tell them what's going on, so that they understand the competing priorities that you're dealing with. Because at the end of the day, when you're a student athlete, I think that um, it's kind of doing two jobs at once. And so making sure that people know that you're not like the non-pre-med athletes, and you're not like the non-athlete pre-meds is a pretty big deal and can make a really big difference in smoothing things over for you when you're pursuing your goals and having fun and meeting different people and doing different things. So I really credit my coach from the team, Coach Assad, Coach Jay, Coach Justin. He was awesome. He always emphasized to us that we were students first and foremost, and then athletes. And so he was a huge support in letting me explore my interests and take time when necessary to be able to pursue things, but obviously not too much. Um, but that sort of lays a foundation for my college experience. And um, somewhere along the way, I think around like the later half of my first year, I heard about this cool program that Mount Sinai had called the FlexMed program. And it basically encourages students with interests outside of medicine to continue pursuing those. Basically, it's an early admissions, early assurance pathway to get into medical school, and with that assurance, to be able to explore your other interests. So I thought that sounded right up my alley. I was the perks of this program were great. No MCAT, fewer pre-med requirements. It sounded like a dream come true. I was getting crushed by all these different things. So I knew I wanted to apply to that. And by some stroke of luck, I got in my sophomore summer. So this was for me summer of 2019. So that was awesome. That was super exciting. Um, I think part of what helped me get into that program was the fact that I sort of just put myself out there and I wasn't afraid of taking on as much as I could handle. Obviously, there's a fine line between overwhelming yourself and taking on and I should say appropriately challenging yourself. But I think that I found the right balance for me with the support of my coach and my professors and everybody else. And so, I think that really helped me stand out to the admissions committee. And the rest is history. But, to take you through the rest of college, what I planned out for the rest of college after that point was I wanted to, continue taking computer science classes because at that point, I thought this is super cool. This is a great skill set regardless. I really want to keep going with this. And especially since I'd seen the applications for it in medicine, right? And so the project that I talked to you about earlier, which was the voice-powered medication assistant, I had built the thing and I wanted to do a study. I wanted to go to some of the nursing homes that I was volunteering at. Oh yeah, that was something else I did. I was volunteering at nursing homes. Um, I wanted to take that thing that I built and to go to the nursing homes and to see how well it helped people take their medication compared to when they previously had it. So that was something I was really excited about. I got IRB approval. That's the Institutional Review Board, which reviews the ethics of research. Um, and so everything was set up. And then March 2020 hit. And you guys know the rest. Obviously I wasn't getting anywhere near a nursing home during that time, so that really derailed everything for me, unfortunately, with that project. What I did instead during that time was I got involved. I knew I wanted to continue pursuing this interest in computer science, or this interest at the intersection of computer science and medicine. And so I did some neuroimaging. Well, I guess you could call it neuroimaging, but it was more imaging research, basically, like the kind that I had done on campus. I started on this project to basically automatically segment like the different vertebrae in the spine in a sagittal, so from the side, MRI. Um, so that was really cool because most models that had been built up until that point were, you get a bunch of orthopedic surgeons together, you get them to label like the vertebrae, and then you feed it to a model and get it to figure it out by itself. But what we did was we built something, or it's kind of presumptuous saying we. I was helping out, but what the team did was they built a tool that would automatically segment those vertebrae without needing a bunch of surgeons to come and like trace it on a computer. So that was a pretty big deal because that lets you scale the technology and bring it from bench to bedside, basically. So that was a really cool project that I pivoted to during COVID. And the rest was, pardon the pun, smooth sailing. I finished my time with the team. It was great all 4 years. I think during this time, being able to count on the support of my coach, count on the support of my teammates was a really big deal. And in hindsight, looking back at this time period, being able to juggle these two jobs basically was really great preparation for medical school. I think I can sort of speak uh, in a lot of detail about med school since I'm just now finishing. And I think that just being able to prioritize as a student athlete um, is takes you so far and lets you hit the ground running in med school, basically. Like, to be honest, I feel like time management was much harder for me in college than it was in medical school, just because it was new to me, and B, also you have to explain to all these different people like the different things that you're juggling, whereas in med school I feel like people just kind of get it that everybody's busy, right? So getting my feet wet with the time management, with the prioritization, absolutely laid the groundwork for the rest of my journey into med school. Um, so that takes me to med school. And um, I think when it comes, so for context, I'm going into anesthesiology, like I mentioned earlier, and so um, I think what the mindset I was taking with me into medical school from college was, I obviously want to learn more. I want to broaden my horizons. I want to learn and see as much as possible, but I want to stay true to myself and the person that I've become in the process of getting here. So for me, that meant somebody who was working on a team, right? I loved being on a team. I loved the teamwork. I loved the camaraderie. And B, I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to see everything, do everything, know everything. I didn't really see myself sort of like really narrowing myself down too much because I think the process of exploring different things for me between computer science, between my pre-med classes and obviously and sailing, there's some physics involved in sailing, right? Yeah, I was just, I'm a curious person, and so I wanted to be in an environment where I would always be seeing different things and meeting different people. And so when I got to med school, it's pretty tough to maintain that, I think, because in your preclinical years at Sinai, it's 2 years going to 1.5. I think a lot of schools are 1.5 now, but anyways, during that time period, it's kind of just put your head down and just study. And so being able to maintain my interest during that time became more challenging, right? Like you're stretched out thin for research because your classes are harder, right? I might not have had sailing, but also, again, the classes are hard. Like there's so much, I talked earlier about drinking from a fire hose when I got to college, and to be honest, in med school, it's uh, that's the most common analogy that people use, drink from a fire hose. So I guess it was good prep regardless. But either way, it felt like I was doing it all over again from the beginning. So there was definitely an adjustment period. Use your school's resources. Med schools always have advisors, learning advisors. We have a great one, Dr. Linkowski. She's amazing. Um, but basically being able to make that transition, I think that everybody gets over it sooner or later. And I count myself as lucky as having had that student athlete experience in college to be able to carry it forward. Um, and so going back to what I was saying about looking for like a team environment, obviously in med school, you have to decide on a specialty uh, pretty early on if it's a more competitive specialty. But either way, sort of 2 to 3 years to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life is, um, I mean, I guess most people do it, but it seems like a pretty big deal. It seemed like a pretty big deal to me at the time. But going with the values that I said before, teamwork, curiosity, exploring things. I basically put myself out there. I shadowed as much as I could to see different fields, meet different people. And ultimately, I settled on anesthesiology because, it lets me work with my hands. It lets me, it's a very intellectual field as well. You work with so many different people, other anesthesiologists, nurses, techs, obviously surgeons from every surgical subspecialty, even non-surgeons like, cardiologists, GI specialists. You really see every corner of the hospital, the ICUs, the emergency department, internal medicine docs, everything, right? And so that was something that really appealed to me, and it helped, I think, in my case, that the person who interviewed me for med school was an anesthesiologist, so he was a nice voice in my ear telling me to pick anesthesia. Um, but, the takeaway I would say from there going into med school as a student athlete is like, I think the same instincts that, um, drive you to succeed as a student athlete are things that you should definitely carry with you in med school. I think, at Sinai, it's pretty unique. We have a lot of student athletes here, or former student athletes, some of whom are, way more decorated than I am. All I got was, some like all Ivy academic honor thing. They're folks who have competed in the Olympics several times, been drafted to the MLB. And I think like, when I see these people succeeding in the school and in the hospital, it boils down to their, you know, tenacity and also the fact that they stay true to themselves. Like they're the same person, and they carry that with them into a new setting where they think like, how can I adapt to this setting? Um, or how can I make the choices that will help me adapt to this setting and let me stay true to myself? Um, so for me, picking anesthesiology was the clear choice. And so, that was something that I think I was asked about on the interview trail for residency as well. People are very curious about that experience. And I think that a lot of folks recognize the dedication it takes to do that and also really value the teamwork aspect of it that goes into your job for 4 years basically, or more in college. Um, and being able to participate in sports is in college, maybe professionally for some people, is just such a crucial experience, I think, for succeeding in medicine. Obviously, it's not necessary for everybody to be a great doctor, but I think it really gives you a leg up in terms of working with different people instead of in terms of staying focused, in terms of staying committed. putting your head down when things get hard, not complaining and just putting in the work. I think sports uniquely prepares you so well for that. And, you know, now going into my residency, I expect the things that I learned from being a college athlete to, continue paying dividends, basically. Um, there are going to be a lot of long days, long nights, long shifts. Um, but I think that remembering the person I grew into, um, thanks to sports, thanks to sailing, but also all the other sports that I did when I was growing up, even Little League. Um, I think that I feel very comfortable and confident taking those lessons with me and starting my career. So hopefully that gives you a good enough overview. Thanks for listening to me give my spiel.
The first thing I would like to ask is, how many sports did you play as a child?
Oh man, that's a good question. Baseball was my favorite easily, but I like tennis too, basketball, soccer. I would say those are the big four. Yeah,
Mhm.
so a lot of footwork in those.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The question, did you take interest in sports or did your parents like put you in sports to try to pique your interest?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so like I mentioned that my grandparents were the sports obsessed people, so they were more about that. My mom actually wanted me to like play the piano or whatever, but I think it's hard to push your kids to in a direction that they don't really want to go in. Um,
Got you.
my grandparents are the coolest people, and so it was sort of like following their example that really drew me into it. Yeah.
So question, if as a kid when you had to play various sports, it's like basketball, football, soccer, baseball, it's like those are the main sports where you play. How did you get into sailing?
How did I get into sailing? That's a great question. So I was around a lot of water growing up. So I would always see sailboats out there. I didn't really have a lot of experience with the kind of sailing we do in college, which is two-person dinghy sailing. So they're like two people in a boat. It's very physical, compared to some of the bigger boats that you see. Seems pretty luxurious. The common question I always get is like, what do you guys do? Isn't it just the boat doing the work? And it's a fair question. Um, but I mean, I think what it came down to was Hanover, New Hampshire is a very isolated place. You're very far from civilization. So out there, there's a lot of like the natural world. There's no chance I'm walking onto any of those other teams, right? But there's all this beautiful nature around. There's a fantastic, world beating team on campus. It was kind of just like the right place, right time for me. It was the opportunity came up. There was an interest. There was a little bit of prior experience, and my coach, Coach Jay, he just took a chance on me. There were other kids with more experience than me for sure. But I think that what he was looking for was kids who learned fast, worked hard, had a great attitude, and somehow that made the difference for me. So I don't know. He must have made a mistake somewhere along the way, but he's never corrected it. So here I am.
During your spiel of your background and sports and everything, I heard a few areas. You're in New York City, I heard Toronto, and I heard Hong Kong. Then I just heard
Yes.
you said Andover. So what made you travel to all of these different places? Was it like your family just moving, or you just had a
Yeah.
lot going on?
Yeah, I guess kind of both. Yeah, I mean, we moved around a lot for my dad's job. He was originally trained as a biomedical engineer, but then he went into health insurance. So a lot of the moving around was for his job. So I think I lived in Toronto till I was 8. Then I moved to Connecticut, and then I moved to Hong Kong when I was about 12. So, and then I came back obviously for college, and I've been here ever since.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, all right. Oh, question. In these various spaces that you've lived in, did you see a difference in school curriculum or how sports is handled in these various spaces that you've been to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I was growing up in Toronto, there actually really wasn't that much of a focus on sports. Um, I don't think it was really promoted or really something that was like popular. Like obviously, uh, people would do it, but I feel like there's just like a different or like once I got to Connecticut, it's just different. It was always like, oh, like he's going to the game or he's playing in the game or he's going to practice or everything else. Like in Canada, I don't know how to put it. It was just a different vibe. Um, for me at least at my public school in Toronto. When I got to Hong Kong, interestingly enough, there was that culture there. There were a lot of people who were into very specific sports. So it wasn't football, it wasn't baseball. It was tennis, it was basketball. There's certain sports that I think are more popular overseas than they are in America. So that was sort of where the tennis came in for me. And I think that was when my focus started to shift interest wise, I guess. I don't know. It made me adaptable. I don't know. Like I always felt bad about being a jack of all trades, master of none growing up, but I think that being adaptable isn't a bad thing necessarily. So,
Uh, when
uh,
you joined the sailing team in college, was you said you were a walk-on?
yes, sir.
How did that experience uh playing different sports, being a walk-on, not having a guarantee, like did that prepare you for the toughness of the medical field, or was there any
Oh, yeah.
benefits to that experience?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, I had to definitely go through this period of proving myself because for other folks, like you're like speaking the same language in terms of, oh, I sailed, these boats growing up. I sailed at this yacht club. did this, did that. For me, proving myself uh, took a bit longer, right? It was, how I performed in practice, how I was in the lift room. Like it felt like um, there was always this pressure on me to prove that I belong there with everybody else. And I think that that sort of feeling or that pressure to perform and to prove yourself um, it definitely helped a lot with medical school, especially when rotations start. Going out on the wards, everybody knows what you're the dumbest person in the room, right? Which, means you're in the right room, right? Because you should be trying to get better always. But when you're the dumbest person in the room, you got to be a quick learner. You got to have a great attitude, and you just got to, get there earlier and work harder than everybody else. And I think that doing that for the sailing team, um, uh, prepared me really well for the wards. Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a new show that I watched that I was like, this is insane. I think it's called The Pit.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you watched that. So my question is, has sports and the camaraderie of team environment prepared you for what it's like to be like in the medical field, the emergency room, and stuff like that? How has team sports prepared you for that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually haven't watched The Pit. I've had like five different people recommend it to me at this point. I tend to shy away from the medical shows personally because they always make me feel like I'm working in my free time. It's just kind of triggering, I guess. But I'll definitely give it a shot, especially since I've graduated now. I have some free time. I think like the teamwork and the camaraderie are absolutely, being able to absolutely critical. Like being able to navigate that sort of environment and to just be a team player. I think it sounds straightforward, but surprisingly, it doesn't come easily to everybody. And I think that being a student athlete, being used to that environment, uplifting the people around you, making the people around you better while also working hard on yourself. I think that's such a crucial component of working in the hospital, and not just with people on your, other MDs necessarily, but also, the like social workers, nurses, technicians, like every single person on the team has a role to play, and I think that's something that when you recognize that and appreciate that in sports and you value each team member like that, medicine is a very hierarchical field, and to be honest, like not everybody has this sort of the same attitude coming in of valuing their teammates and being a team player. Some people um, might think differently. And I think that coming in with that sense of humility, but also sort of self-confidence, takes you a long way in terms of adapting to a hospital setting. Um, 100%. Yeah,
So the next question is a little multi-leveled of a question. I want to ask about support along your journey through sports, through medical school, through your internships, through your volunteer work. Did you get a level of support from family, from friends, from teammates, from coaches? And how has that all transcended to your journey towards the end of medical school?
for sure. I to put it simply, I wouldn't be here without them today. Like every single person that's helped me along the way, every single person that's taken a chance on me when I've, cold emailed them or just reached out or walked into a tryout. Um, you know, my parents, why are you going to Charleston for spring break? Oh, it's for practice, like every single thing. My friends, like not being able to hang out with them because I had practice, like every single thing, like people's love and understanding for me, helped me go out there and get the experiences that I did that helped me become the person I am today. I really think, everybody says it takes a village to like raise a child. I think it takes a village to just become a real person, just to continue growing and to continue to get better. No person can do it alone, and I think that I've been so blessed and fortunate to have so many supportive people around me, support me along my journey. I think I kind of look for them in a way. Um, because obviously why would you gravitate to someone who's not supportive, but I definitely wouldn't be here without them, and I you know I'm just so grateful. I couldn't even name them all, honestly. That's a great question. Thank you, appreciate that.
So, when you were in college, was you Division 1, Division 2, or Division 3?
Yeah, it's Division 1 at Dartmouth.
Okay.
Yeah, but Ivy League Division 1 is like, what are we talking about? But yeah.
Did you feel any pressure while playing Division 1 at that level? Because the Division 1 is a different level. Did you feel any pressure about picking your education over maintaining the athlete moniker? Like sometimes they're like you're athlete first or you're a
Yeah.
student first. Were you able to balance the two?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned earlier my coach, Coach Jay, he emphasized from, the first time I walked into, our team meeting room in our boathouse. It was like, you guys are students first and athletes uh, also, I think he said. And so that element of support was pretty critical. I don't know if I would have gone down this path that I had if he had said something differently, to be honest. Because even while we were there, he was encouraging us to think beyond. Obviously, great if you're going to be sailing past college, right? Not everybody keeps doing their sport after collegiate sports. Some folks went on to the Olympics. Most of us, had to settle for other things. But I think that having a coach that had our best interests in mind, in terms of looking forward to the men and women that we would grow up to become, was a really big game changer for me in terms of setting me on the path that I'm on today. Um, and just in terms of achieving that balance, I think you touched on it earlier with your questions about support. Um, you know, I think it's absolutely critical to have the people around you understand and support you in doing what you do. And also, I think the onus is on you to be able to prioritize and learn how to value different things in your life, right? You can't just sleepwalk into different things. I think that having all my free time basically go towards either school or well, I guess what is free time anyways? But anyways, having all my time go towards sports or school forced me to like really ask questions like, do I really need to like go to this thing with my buddies, right? Like what does that mean when I've made a commitment, right? Like the river sounds fun, but I have this practice, I have this assignment. Being able to triage like the most important thing in your life at any given moment, I think was there's an element of personal responsibility there as well, for sure.
And I wanted to ask a question about like overcoming adversity. Um, when we're children, we're playing sports, we learn the lessons in defeat. We learn the lessons in who's better, like a pecking order. You learn to look over to your side and say, "Oh, he's better. I got to get better than him," and stuff like that. So overcoming hurdles is the question in terms of your journey, in terms of managing school and work, and then overcoming any hurdles that you had in medical school. Since you're already at the end, was there any time you wanted to quit, and how did you overcome it?
That was a great. I can actually point to a very specific moment I was thinking about quitting. That was, I think it was my sophomore year. I was sailing at Boston College's venue in South Boston. It was a place. Their venue's Savin Hill Yacht Club. I think it was early March, um, and it was maybe 30 degrees without factoring wind chill. It was blowing 20 knots, so the wind chill probably it felt like 10, honestly. And it was hailing. And in that environment, we just decided to get in our boats and go out there and sail. Um, which I don't think ever been in as physically extreme an environment like that. Like obviously we get pushed in the weight room, but uh having to go out there and throw our bodies around and get blasted with ice water in our faces and not feel any part of our bodies. Um, I think I was seriously questioning myself in that moment right there. Like, I don't know if I'm good enough for this, honestly. But I think that like that was such a formative experience for me because we finished out the regatta. We came in second, so not bad. And afterwards, I'll just never remember the feeling of one, having feeling come back to my like fingers, toes, face. But also like the sort of shared sense of um, like just accomplishment and joy I had with my teammates because each one of them was out there thinking the same thing, you know, like why am I here? Why am I doing this? And knowing that we made it through together, and that we stuck by each other and we executed according to what we practiced for, um, you know, that feeling of overcoming adversity is way better than like the bad moments of facing adversity, I think. And in each you know, I guess adverse moment I've faced since then, and there have been many, especially in medical school, studying for tests, balancing things, waking up at 5 a.m. for surgery, for your surgery rotation. Um, I think that like it's always been that critical formative experience, the memory of that feeling that I had after surviving, whatever that was, like a blizzard, a torturous experience. Like surviving that really just, I think, set the tone for me the rest of the way. So I feel like that raised my pain threshold pretty high. And I'm ready to raise it even higher in residency. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask the crowd, do you have any questions? Please come off mute and ask any questions if you may have them.
All right. Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Your volume's a little low.
Like, so speaking about so like I mean, I'm not in the medical field per se, bro. Like I'm doing computer engineering right now. And like hearing you say you did computer science and pre-med is like crazy. So with the 40 hours that you did like and practice on yeah, I play football. I'm like that shit is pulling me, bro. Oh, it's really hard. It's really difficult. It's pretty difficult. Uh, pretty difficult. And I don't know, like I feel like I can't really push them, but I feel like you're throwing. I would love to know how you balance it. Give me like a day by that's great.
Yeah, day by day. For sure. First of all, super cool that you're doing computer engineering, man. That's awesome. Especially while playing football. That's hard. One of my best buddies, he played football at Dartmouth and he was doing mechanical engineering. So I know how hard that gets. 100%. In terms of how I balanced it day by day, um, I'm actually super glad you asked that question that way because I think, the only way to do it is day by day. I think if you look forward to like the net amount of time you have to put into it, it's like really, really scary. But if you just figure out a routine that works for yourself and stick to that, then it becomes like way more doable. So I would say like an average like weekday for me would be, I would all of our classes were, so our practices were in the afternoon. We would like lift at noon, um, go to practice right after. So afternoon classes were off the table. So basically we were forced to wake up early every single day, study, go to class, whatnot. So I'd be waking up, uh, it doesn't even sound that early when I say it now, but I would wake up at like 7 every day, knock whatever workout I had, show it to my like 8 a.m. class, push through to like noon, grab a bite to eat, go to practice or go lift, go to practice. I'd get back at around 6, grab dinner. And depending on how much work I had, I would be either studying or hanging out with friends. Um, and that would pretty much take me to, maybe 9 or 10. And I would always try to sort of be in bed between 10 or 11 because I need my beauty sleep, you know. Um, but yeah, it's sort of just like focusing on the day by day, I think for me really helped. And also, if you're doing the same thing every day, it gets really boring, right? So I think that, um, I'm a big fan of saying there's no such thing as boring uh situations, only boring people. Being able to find the joy in every single thing that you do, even if in the weight room for like the 50th time, and you're like, you know, thinking about all the assignments that you have waiting for you. I think that just trying to find little interesting things to talk about with other people or to learn about or to do, um, that really made it a lot of fun along the way. Does that answer your question?
So, okay, somewhere, yeah. Because I feel like I haven't been getting enough sleep. I can't get mine now. Usually it's like 4, like 4 or like you say 5 max. 5 genuinely like I'm not like super. I'm not like a high level. Like, I'm doing good. I was just playing. Started playing for my junior year of high school. So I was bored and like I don't know. I just somehow got here. But like I don't know. Like that's so crazy, bro. Doing all that and getting your beauty sleep, bro. That's
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to sacrifice the social life, on certain nights for sure. But hey, you're cutting in and out right now. Was there something else that you said? Sorry, I missed that earlier part.
it was basically that. Yeah, it was basically that. It was basically that. It was basically that.
All right, okay, sounds good.
Thank
But
you for
hey,
contributing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All the best. All the
So the
best to you.
last question is like a three-er. It's what's something you would tell your younger self to prepare yourself for your older self? What life lesson is the best life lesson you learned? And what words of encouragement you can give to your listeners?
Man, those are three back-to-back hard ones. Okay. I'll take them one by one. For my younger self, I would say, um, don't forget to have fun. I think that um, in the heat of the moment, um, grinding things out day by day, um, I think it can get easy to get bogged down in like all the things you have to do, the stress of having to perform, whether in sports or in school. Um, I think remembering to just have fun with everything that you do is the best advice that I could give him. Um, and I think that would probably help him grow up quicker and to not worry so much. You know. Um, The second question was sorry, what was it?
What's your best life lessons you learned thus far?
What's my best life lesson? Yeah. I think it would probably have to be something my grandparents told me. You know, they're kind of like my guiding sages. I remember one time um my grandma told me, I think it was like after a really rough term I had in college. I was like I basically had no social life that quarter. I was just between sailing and class. I think I was taking organic chemistry that term. So there was basically no free time. And so after those 10 weeks, you know, she saw me. I was pretty cooked. Sorry, I was pretty, you know, exhausted. And she told me, she like going back to her days as a pro athlete, um, she told me like, look, like, the part of the game is being able to take care of yourself and to take care of the people around you. You know, that's what really makes everything matter. It's not like um the outside stuff. You know, it's like the person you are inside and the people that you care about. And never forget that the people you care about, um, they don't care about those like fancy like, things that you slap on a resume or like, winning a regatta or anything. They care about you and your well-being and your happiness. And I'm the kind of person that kind of like tries to go the extra mile for the people that I care about, but to sort of like tamp down on my own needs a little bit. And so hearing that from her and reframing my mindset, sort of framing self-care as something done for the benefit of my loved ones, um, that was a really big life lesson for me that I've carried with me ever since. And I think if there's anyone else out there who is the same way, sort of, I guess, self-sacrificing, I think that's a really great way to reframe your mindset. And to like, was the last one a general piece of advice, Anthony?
General piece of advice to anybody listening and words of encouragement or anything.
Words of encouragement, man. I mean, honestly, I think um, I'll limit the scope of this to sort of student athletes looking to do medicine, I guess. I think that, you know, I mean, this is as about a good and on ramp to this field as you can, like I think um, uplifting your teammates, making them better, yourself working on making yourself better. I think medicine is just like that. I think when you're contributing to a patient's care, we always talk about like patient care teams. And the most important person on that care team is the patient themselves, right? So I think that being a great teammate, and being a great competitor, um, at least in my head, maybe I'm just talking myself into it, but I feel like there's a one-to-one connection between being a student athlete and being a great doctor. So I would say that, I really do believe that medicine is a field that is not defined by how smart you are, but by like mainly two other things, like how hard you work, and how much you really care. And I think sports is such a great way to, um, you know, just prove yourself in that way, show that you can work hard and show that you care. Um, and so to everyone out there who's, thinking about it, who's potentially interested, who's currently on the path, good luck to you. You can absolutely do it. And I hope I see you in the hospital one day as a colleague, not as a patient.
But thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your story, appreciate your candor and your word of advice. As always, everyone, we are back. Athletes with swag. Catch us next month where we have our next guest speaker. As always, we will record this and put this on our YouTube page. Thank you for coming out and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.